نحمده ونصلي على رسول الكريم أما بعد السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته, and welcome to another episode of Siratu Khatam al-Nabiyyin, the biography of the final prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And I hope you've been enjoying the series so far, and those of you who have followed keenly will know that we are on the verge today discussing the birth of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Those of you who are joining now for the first time might be thinking what's been going on for the last 20 odd episodes, but you have missed out on plenty because there's been a build up to this momentous occasion. It is reported that he was born on a Monday, and this has been related by Imam Muslim alayhi rahmah in his Sahih, in which the hadith is told by Ghaylan ibn Jarir from Abdullah ibn Ma'bad al-Dhimani from Abu Qatada, that the Bedouin said, "O Messenger of Allah, what do you say about fasting on Mondays?" So he replied, "This is the day I was born and the day I was first sent revelation." So we can see Monday seems to be a reliable view because it's the view which has been reported in the Sahih of Muslim. Imam Ahmad has a narration as well, which is attributed to Abdullah ibn Abbas radhiyallahu anhuma, who mentioned that the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam was born on a Monday. He received the prophethood on a Monday. He left Mecca for Medina as an emigrant on a Monday, and he arrived in Medina on a Monday. He passed away on a Monday, and he raised up the stone on a Monday. So here we can see that Monday seems to be a day not only of his arrival on this earth, but also a day of momentous occasions in his life, and also then his leaving of this earth. Some have obviously questioned this view, that it was that all of these relate to a Monday. Some have felt that the key points of his birth and his passing were on a Monday, and haven't substantiated the other views themselves in terms of all the other various acts which took place on this day. But we can see that there seems to be a majority view, a view expressed by senior historians, by senior narrators and narrations that have been collated by senior muhaddithin, which point towards Monday being the day. So with the day somewhat agreed upon by ourselves, let's move next on to the month. And the month that has been expressed by Ibn Kathir as rahmatullah alayhi as the one that most accept to be the month in which Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was born is the month of Rabiul Awwal, and it is it said it was a second or such of that. So this is the second day of that month. Others have gone to say it was the eighth of that month. So you're starting to see various opinions, but Rabiul Awwal seems to be agreed upon as well. Another account which Ibn Dihya mentions is that it occurred on the 10th of the month, and then we also have a view which it was on the 12th of the month. And this seems to come with some authority because Ibn Ishaq mentions this, and we also have Ibn Abi Shayba mentioning this narration in his compilation as well on the authority of Affan, and again it's reported from Abdullah ibn Abbas, in which he said the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam was born in the year of the elephant. And the year of the elephant, if you recall, was the year which was mentioned when Abraha arrived in Mecca with his elephants ready to lay Mecca to waste, in particular the Kaaba. And so this is the same year that Abraha came to destroy the Kaaba, and is referred to as the year of the elephant because it was such a momentous occasion, such a occurrence which is recorded in the books of history, and people would mention it to their children, and as a consequence their grandchildren, about this great day in which this enemy arrived in this amazing beast, and the way then this army was put to waste by the sending of these unusual and remarkable birds carrying these stones. And this was something that people were not going to forget, and this was something which was handed from generation to generation. So the narration goes further that it was on the year of the elephant, and it was on Monday the 12th of Rabiul Awwal, And this was on the same day he received his mission, as in he received revelation. He was taken up to the heavens on this day, and also he emigrated from Mecca on this day, and he also passed away on this day. So here we can see another narration mentioning Monday again, but also mentioning other great events which took place on this day. But 12th of Rabi' Awwal seems to be a more agreed upon position, as was reported in this narration. Having said that, there are numerous positions. We already mentioned the 2nd, we already mentioned the 8th. We also have another mentioning here, which the 8th, which we've already mentioned with the Dihya. But we have another account that he was actually born in Ramadan. And this is a very ajib and a very sort of much of an outlier in terms of an opinion, and very few people accept that. And the reason why this position was added, because obviously the Prophet ﷺ received revelation in Ramadan, and we know, or we are told, that he was 40 years old when he received revelation. So by deduction, people have made the assumption that he must also have been then born in Ramadan in order for him to be 40 years later in Ramadan. That's not necessarily a sound reasoning to adopt, because a person could be 41 now or 40 now and turn 41 in 9 months' time. So when he's experiencing Ramadan now, he's technically still 40 years old, even though in 8-9 months' time he will be 49. He will be 41 years old. He's not going to age by 9 years in 9 months. So we have that position as well, but that position has been challenged. We then have another narration, again it's Abdullah ibn Abbas, that mentions that the Messenger ﷺ was born on a Monday in Rabiul Awwal. Revelation came to him on the Monday, and this was the 1st of Rabiul Awwal. And also Surah Baqarah was revealed on a Monday in Rabiul Awwal. But again, even though this is mentioned by Ibn Asakir, Ibn Kathir alayhi rahmah sees this as an ajib statement in his point. So we seem to have kind of discussed the many opinions and that have existed regarding the birth of the Prophet ﷺ. So it's not fact, it's not absolutely substantiated beyond all doubt. It seems to be pointing towards the position of 12th of Rabiul Awwal, but we're also seeing that there were other events which took place on that day, on this Monday in particular. We talk about his migration, we talk about his raising to the heavens, receiving revelation, but also his passing away. And so it's not necessarily guaranteed that when we try to commemorate the Prophet ﷺ, that we know which particular day he was born on. And this is relevant in this day and age, because there is a view amongst some that if a person doesn't, say, celebrate the Prophet ﷺ, his birthday as such, then he has some kind of problem with him, or he has disrespect or hatred for Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. And this sort of conflation between not celebrating his birth and having a despise or hatred towards him is misunderstood and is a misconception. If people do choose to do so, then that's their choice, However, if we look at it, and if we look at the times of the Sahaba, and obviously as we progress through, but it seems an apt point to raise this now, as we progress through the life of Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, we'll see that when the Prophet ﷺ passed away, and in history we see that the Sahaba in particular did not start a new practice which they felt was necessary. If anybody was going to feel the absence of Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, it would have been the Sahaba. If anybody's going to miss him, if anybody's going to want to replace him or try to remember him or commemorate him, then it would have been the Sahaba. It wouldn't have been anybody else but them. Reason being is they knew him personally. As much as we wish we'd like to know him, as much as we are striving to get to know him by listening to these lectures, as much as we make effort to reflect over these lectures and spend time reading about him and sending durood upon him, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, then we can never really reach that stage of being in his companionship. And that's one of the reasons why the title of a Sahaba is something quite rare and unique, as I've mentioned previously, we could quite easily refer to the Sahaba as ulama, as fuqaha, experts in fiqh, as mufassirun, experts in tafsir, as muhaddithun, experts in hadith. We could mention them in all of these various roles, and they were qurra, they were experts in all the sciences which then we have learned and had to specialize in. They were experts in them, but they never took that title. The title they did take was Sahaba. Why? Because they spent time in the company of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and spending time in his company gave them something which could not be given to anybody else. So they're going to feel his absence even more. And also with the younger generation, those who never saw the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam beyond the age of 3 years old, say, or those who were born after he'd passed away, for them to remember him, for them to know him, then they would have easily said, what we're going to do is we're going to fix this day, and this day is what we're going to all get together, and we're going to do X, Y, Z in order to commemorate his birth, in order to remember, so we don't forget him. They didn't. But they didn't forget him either. So they did do something, but they didn't do it in the way where they celebrated his birth. So what did they do? Well, what they did was the instructions that Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam had left them, and that was to carry on doing the acts, in the ones they did in his presence. Why? Why didn't the Prophet ﷺ give some kind of permissibility or give some kind of instruction? Because he himself would have realized the importance of a messenger. He himself would have realized the importance of a Nabi and the respect that is required and the love that is required, as we've already explained in the first few episodes, that's required towards the Nabi. He would have left those instructions. But he didn't. And the reason he didn't, and we see similarities, is that when the Prophet ﷺ was passing away, he mentioned quite categorically, in quite harsh terms, that don't follow the paths, I'm paraphrasing, don't follow the paths of the Jewish people and the Christians who took their places of the resting place of the Anbiya as places of worship. What he was trying to mention, and we saw that particularly in the early stages as well, when revelation was descending from the heavens, he wouldn't allow the Sahaba to write down his statements. He wouldn't allow the Sahaba, even upon their request, to show any level of respect towards him in terms of bowing for him, in terms of standing for him, and anything of that nature. And the reason for that is because he wanted to differentiate between Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the being that should be worshipped, and him, the individual that should be followed. He wanted to differentiate between the two. He wanted to absolutely put in the minds of the Sahaba that I'm a messenger and I am bringing a message. And by me saying that, I'm not, na'udhu billah min zalik, trying to disrespect or degrade the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. I'm saying this with respect to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I'm not saying this as a standalone statement. I'm saying this with respect to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That his status, as he was trying to explain, is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the being that has to be worshipped, not me. And in order to explain that, in order to drive that message home, he would use statements like, I'm only a messenger. I can make mistakes, obviously, in worldly affairs, not in terms of revelation or in religious affairs. And he would always explain his human elements and his human side. And he would always state to them, and we even see Sayyidina Abu Bakr who mentioned in the very same statement when Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam had left the surface of the earth. He mentioned the same statement and reminding them of the verse that those who worshipped Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, those who worship Rasulullah, then like everybody else, he's gonna pass away. He's gonna leave the surface of the earth. What are you gonna do then? Are you gonna abandon religion? Are you gonna abandon Islam? Because at the end of the day, you worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we saw the renegades, in particular in the era of Sayyidina Abu Bakr Khilafat, where they objected to giving zakat. Why? Because they said, we gave our zakat to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Now Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is not amongst us. We pray to Allah, so we worship Allah. We fast for the sake of Allah. We perform Hajj for the sake of Allah. But when it came to zakat, we handed it to Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He's no longer with us, so we're not going to give it. However, we saw Sayyidina Abu Bakr object to that. So what we're seeing here is the differentiation, the demarcation between the messenger and the being who sent the message. And this is what the Prophet ﷺ tried to do. So what would have happened if, say, the Sahaba had instigated this act of remembering Prophet Muhammad ﷺ in a Eid as such, in a celebration, is that even though they would have instigated it in the time of the Sahaba and the Tabi'in and Tabi'in in its perfect form, What would have happened in the passing of time, as we've seen in all our practices, we've seen that, in all our acts of worship, exaggerations, whether it's Qurra, who exaggerate in their recitation, whether it's, people who develop different types of acts of worship, feeling that it's not sufficient to just pray salah, so they try to initiate other things, like if you pray X number of nafils at this time, then this will happen, or whatever. So, we seem not to be satisfied with what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us through the teachings of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So, this is the differentiation which I'm sure you're watching me as I'm struggling with my my tablet as it's playing games with me. It likes to play games with me because, I guess it's trying to get its own back, saying that, well, I'm a device where people use me to play games on me. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn the books on you now, and I'm going to play games with you. But I think it's behaving itself now, so it's not going to have to go to any level of consequences. I think we've agreed that it's going to. But let me just get back to what I was referring to. And what I was talking to about is this the celebration of the Prophet ﷺ's birth and the requirement for it. We see it coming in later at a time in order to show this honor and respect to him. Now, we can't, if we talk in the general sense that when the month comes around, and people think, well, this is a month in which we should, without doubt, we should be following the Prophet ﷺ throughout the year. Absolutely. Without doubt, we should be setting durood upon the Prophet ﷺ throughout the year. Absolutely. Without doubt, we should be following his instructions and doing as he says, and that will give him greater pleasure than anything else. But when it comes to education, we should also be educating regarding the Prophet as we are now. Our series is not just running in Rabiul Awwal, it's running throughout the year. So the aim is to obviously give individuals that opportunity. But what it does do is that it kind of it focuses our attention in Rabiul Awwal. It does focus our attention because we know it's the month in which the Prophet ﷺ was born. So because it focuses our attention a little bit, then there's nothing wrong if there was, individuals running extra programs during this month. Not necessarily fixing a day, because we can't fix a day. As you've seen, there's numerous valid narrations which support any number of days. So that we can't say absolutely categorically. So that month is a month in which we can sort of focus and brings our attention to the fore, and maybe give that extra bit of education, extra bit of tawajjuh, focus, direction, in order to bring his awareness amongst the people. But does that mean that we take it as a day of Eid? Does it mean that we dress in a certain way? Does it mean that we sort of, party in a certain way? Does it mean that we gather in masajids or madarises and we start to, do things which is, first of all, contrary to the Sharia, and secondly, it's something which is, not necessarily mubah, but it's extravagant, and it's going beyond what the Prophet ﷺ would be happy. And then sometimes it's even associated with false ideologies and false beliefs, giving certain characteristics to the Prophet ﷺ which he didn't have, and those characteristics are solely divine characteristics. So as we see these, because it takes, you give an inch and folk take a mile, is that step by step, as one generation comes and the next generation comes, they want to kind of bring the next level. They want to push, we always want to push barriers, don't we? I guess weddings is a good example. Years gone by, weddings were pretty simple. But as time has gone on, you'd get into your average hall with the standard tables and chairs, and there'd be a little kitchen there, there'd be lots of noise, and that's it. People will get fed and go. Now, we've got plush hotels, waiters and waitresses delivering the food. Forget, hiring a limousine or something. And back in the day, you might just hire a simple Mercedes or something. Now it's not even a limousine. Now it might be, horse and carriage or helicopter that lands on the top of the hotel, and then the bride and the groom come down, and a 6-foot cake and this and that and the other. I could go on. And then when the next generation or later on, somebody wants to top that. So they take it to the next level. And we see the same with these milads, is that, some group of people want to think that, well, okay, I want to sort of push it a little bit further. I want to push it a little bit further. I want to push it a little bit further. And because there's no knowledge around there, because it's not being knowledge-led, and it's being sort of people-led who are, your average people, then there's always the transgressing of boundaries. So we need to understand that by individuals who choose not to behave in this way, that it's not as if they have a disrespect for the Prophet ﷺ, because they may choose to adopt the sunnah throughout their lives all the time. In the way they speak, in the way they behave, in the way they move, in the way they do business, in the way they, the feelings and thoughts they have towards others. So how can anybody say that this person is showing disrespect to Prophet Muhammad ﷺ when he's literally acting upon as many sunnah as possible for a period of 5-10 years? You know, how can we even say that? And then we initiate something, we innovate something which has no place within the Sharia. And the greatest of the generations, the first 3 generations, never brought it about, when arguably it should have been brought about at that time, because they were the ones who would have missed Prophet Muhammad more than anybody else. They were the ones who would have realized his significance in the message and the bringing of the message, and they would have thought, we need to make sure that the generations which come after also understand that. So I feel it's an apt point to raise and appreciate how we go from one point and slowly, step by step, end up somewhere completely different. So the balance that we're talking about, and any type of effort that we make towards remembering of Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, then it must be according to the Sunnah. How can we do something in relation to Prophet Muhammad ﷺ and then choose a path other than his? Because his path is called the Sunnah. That's his path. And by trying to, when we say we're celebrating his birthday, what are we doing it for? We're trying to show him respect. So when we're showing respect to Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, then surely we should adopt the ways in which he has adopted, in which he has expressed his way. And that's very important. And we see that. We see that, for instance, when the Messenger ﷺ found out that the Jewish people were fasting on the 10th of Muharram. So he asked them regarding it, why are you doing this for? And they informed him that this is actually a day of great happiness for us. Why is it great happiness for us? Because Musa ﷺ was freed from Pharaoh. He was given freedom and from slavery, his people, and therefore we commemorate that by showing our gratitude towards Allah. So you see these individuals who had institutionalized a fast on that day. So their celebration was an act of worship. What happens, and what did Rasulullah ﷺ do? He said, well, we have got more right to Musa ﷺ than anybody else, because we still follow his path. So therefore we will also bring this act in. And then there was another day added to it, so as not that folk would misunderstand that is Islam and Muslims are just a sect of Judaism, or do they have their own path? So it's very important. But there was no party, there was no getting together, there was no fancy clothes, there was no intermingling, there was nothing of natures which which the Sharia itself has spoken against, and then try to suggest that this is actually part of the showing gratitude and commemorating the Prophet ﷺ and his life. Because when we look at the life of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ and we look to commemorate it, what did he do? Did he party all the time? Did he enjoy himself all the time? Did he do these sorts of things? No. In fact, his life, as we will see, even at the time of his birth, he suffered loss. Even before he was born, he suffered loss. Even as a mere fetus, in his mother's womb, he suffered loss. He lost his father. He became an orphan at that particular time. And then we will see, if I get around to it, we will see him losing his mother. We will see him losing his grandfather. We will see him then going through difficult times after the age of 40, how he was dealt with and what difficulties he faced. You don't see much partying, or you don't see anything of that nature whatsoever. So are we commemorating? What kind of life are we commemorating for his? How are we remembering his life? Surely when we remember somebody's life, we remember the way he lived it. How he would have wanted us to live it. So we need to reflect over these things and not let our emotions get the better of us. We need to think with our minds and not necessarily with our hearts. There's a balance in everything. And this is the balance. And if we say, we have certain groups of people have a lack of respect to the Prophet, then that accusation is also being leveled against the Sahaba, the Tabi'in and the Tabi'in as well. And that's a pretty serious accusation to make, because we can't just say, I was only referring to this group of people. We're referring to everybody who doesn't partake in that. Anyway, I felt that was a relevant point to raise at this particular juncture as we're talking about the birth of Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. But because I have in great detail talked about this particular act that some individuals partake in now and have done over the last few centuries, it's made me realize that we've not had time to really get into the sort of nitty-gritty of the actual birth and how that occurred and whatever. We've had chance, mashallah, to talk about the month in which he was born in and possible days in which he was born in, but we've not had much more chance than that. So you've got no choice but to join me again in the next episode, where I hopefully will move straight onto those topics so we can carry on our journey through Siratu Khatam Nabiyyin. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.